On today's show, we are talking about the Tigers getting swept by the Royals, and where does MCDC Motor City Dan Campbell rank as a head coach in the NFL? Let's get to it.
And there's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Reggie Miller. And it's blocked again. What a block.
Lead pass in for Larkin. In space for Raymond. And he scores! Lucas Raymond!
Welcome back to Detroit Sports Talk. I am your host, Bobby Buckets, and I want to thank you for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like today's show, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts on today's topics, or reach out to me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. Game one of the Western Conference Finals was last night. Mavs defeated the T-Wolves 108-105. So T-Wolves were favored. We're supposed to win by 4 or 5. I suggested taking Mavs plus 4.5, and so really Mavs money line would have hit, but Mavs plus 4.5 did hit last night. So in my gambling advice career, we are now sitting at 1-1. All right, we're 1-1. We're 50%. With game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals coming up tonight, I'm going to make another play. So to compare it to the first game, Boston was minus 10. They did not cover as they won by 5, and the total was sitting at 223. It's now minus 9 for Boston, and the total has bumped up to 225. And so I was taking a look at the difference between the first half output to the second half output. And remember, game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals went to overtime. So the over, if you took the over, it was easy money at that point. But they scored 128 points in the first half. It was 64-64 between Boston and Indy in game 1, and then they only scored 106 points in the second half. So the total has increased given how many points were scored in that first game and the fact that it went to overtime. So it's gone up 2 points. I am actually going to take the under of tonight's game. I think that 106 in the second half is more on par with pace, with, defensive competitiveness. I just don't think that these playoff games are going to be all about scoring a ton of points, and I think you're going to see some defense in tonight's game. So my pick for tonight for game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals will be under 225 points. I took that on FanDuel already, so we'll see how we'll do. We are now into episode 4 of the show, and the episodes have been they've had varied lengths so far. I think the first one was 15, and then it was like 40 minutes for the second one, and then it was 30 minutes for the third one. So I'm trying to figure out what I like the most. Right now, I think I prefer the 15 to 25 range as opposed to the 30 to 40 range. I think the hardest part about this right now is coming up with a script. And honestly, it kind of feels like I'm lesson planning, like I'm teaching again, except when I was in year 7 of teaching, I mean, I could walk in, look at what I was supposed to teach that day, and that would be all I would need from a lesson planning standpoint. I could just get right into it and teach. So I definitely had the background knowledge, and, I was teaching. It could have been me teaching the same lesson for the 4th year in a row because I taught, all the same classes. So it's just kind of like you're repeating something that you've already done. Whereas, this is just the 4th attempt of creating an episode this show, so I know that I'll get better at it. But what I'm finding is majority of my time goes into the lesson planning part or the script part, to where like I'm writing full paragraphs of what I want to say, as opposed to just kind of using bullet points and just kind of whatever comes to my mind. I'm just speaking, whatever is first coming as a thought, I guess. So I want to try to stick to more of the bullet points and just kind of like let things roll off my tongue and just kind of say it as I think it, as opposed to being so scripted, because it takes so much time on the front end to come up with all of that stuff. The tricky part is I spend a lot of that time looking up stats. So the numbers that I'm sharing with you guys is stuff that I'm looking up and searching for in order to share. So I still prefer to do that, as I would prefer this be like a numbers-based or a data-based show. But I want to just like throw those stats into bullet points as opposed to coming up with a whole script, as I think I'll probably just get better at speaking about those bullet points and knowing what I want to say without having to type out an entire paragraph. So for this one, we're only going to go through 2 topics, and I'm going the bullet point route so that I can, speak about basically speak about these things without needing a full script. So that's going to be an update for the show today. Eventually, I'd like to get into getting some better graphics. Instead of having the number 1 and the number 2 in our agenda, I'm thinking about, putting like a little baseball instead of number 1, using a baseball as a bullet point, and then using a football as a bullet point for number 2. Got a suggestion from a subscriber to make sure that I include the date, so you can see the date in the ticker. Today's date, I'm going to make sure that I always update that every time that I have a show. Shout out Birch. And so if you guys can think of anything else, any other suggestions, very open to feedback to try to make the show better. Just trying to find our niche. I think I want to keep it short and sweet, 15 to 25 minutes per episode, talk a couple minutes per topic, and keep it moving. So let's go ahead and get into the first topic. And of course, we're going to talk about the Detroit Tigers. So Tigers were swept by the Royals last 3 games. And honestly, what a terrible series for the Tigers. Honestly, you lose game 1, 8-3. You lose game 2, 10-3, and you lose game 3, 8-3. So 8-3, 10-3, 8-3. You got smoked every game. The Royals looked better than you every step of the way. From a roster management standpoint, they've put better players on the field. And the guys that you're hoping to develop on the Tigers are not developing like the guys on the Royals are. I probably should have known this prior to this show, but I didn't. And this show is making me learn these things. So that's what I'm happy about, or that's the reason why I enjoy doing the show, is I'm learning more, about all the Detroit sports, but also just what's going on in the other leagues, and learned who Bobby Witt Jr. is. And Bobby Witt Jr. is probably exactly who you hope Spencer Torkelson was going to turn into. So that guy's a dog. He's going to lead the Royals to many, many wins this season and the future. Just not a great turnout by the Tigers this series. I mean, I don't really know what else to say other than they just were not good. The record in May has dropped to 6-13. So that's losing. You're winning less than that, a third of your games. And if you held that winning percentage for the rest of the year, you're winning 51 games. If you're on pace to be a 6-13 team, you're on pace to win 51 games. So your record would be 51 and 111 losses by the end of the year. For context, nobody in the AL Central last year won less than 51 games. It was the Royals who were the worst team last year. They came in last place with 56 wins. So right now, the performance of the Tigers in May would be worse than any other team in the AL Central last year, with the Royals at 56 wins, because your current play in May is on pace for 51 wins. Now, frankly, it's not a totally fair way to compare it, I think, because the Tigers are just below 500. They're not a 6-13 team. They're a 23-26 team. Baseball Reference, that website has them at an 18% chance to make the playoffs right now, and they have a less than a 1% chance to win the World Series. If you were to take their 23-26 pace game or season and extend it over the entire season, you're looking at a 76-86 season. So not great, just below 500, just like they are currently. The Tigers won 78 games last year. So you're on pace for 76 wins this year after being a 78-win team last year. That's not the kind of production, the kind of improvement that you're hoping to see out of the Tigers. Essentially, this is just it's a mediocre, a slightly below average baseball team. And that's just not a great place to be. You either want to be competing for the playoffs, or you want to be bad enough that you have a chance at getting a top pick in the draft and getting a true difference maker, someone like you thought Torkelson will be, could still very well turn into that player. But right now you're kind of in that mid-tier baseball team, and it's just not a great place to be. So hopefully the Tigers will see some improvements the rest of the season. Do you think they get to 78 wins? Currently on pace to get 76 wins. Are they going to get 78 wins and get more wins than they got last year, or are they going to get less wins than this year? Give me your prediction in the comments below on YouTube, or let me know over on Twitter. On to the second topic, and that's going to be dealing with the Detroit Lions. I listened to a podcast from Mina Kimes of ESPN. Really like Mina over the past few years. She seems to be a big fan of Detroit and Motor City Dan Campbell. And so they had an interesting podcast today. She had Kevin Clark on, and they collabed on kind of a top 10 list of NFL head coaches in the league. Their top 5, maybe even top 7 were the same, just in different orders. And so I basically combined their top 7, and I want to go through that with you. Dan Campbell finished at number 7. So out of 32 NFL coaches, Dan Campbell was their 7th ranked head coach. Above him, at number 1, Andy Reid. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan. Number 3, Sean McVay. Number 4, John Harbaugh. Number 5, Mike Tomlin. And number 6, Matt LaFleur. An interesting one there at Matt LaFleur. Now, their top 5, Andy Reid, I would say he's the number 1 coach in the league. Kyle Shanahan at number 2. I'm probably not going to disagree with that one. Hired him in 2017. He's been to the NFC Championship game in 4 of the last 5 years. So consistently good. Sean McVay. That's an interesting one. I think with the Stafford season, they went out and got Stafford, won the Super Bowl. They knew what they needed. They went and got it and ended up winning it all. I thought they were a surprise team late last year. I didn't want to play the Rams. I wanted to play the Packers in the wild card game or for the Lions' first playoff game. They turned it on late. The Rams did in that season. They were a hot team to end the season. So McVay at 3. The crazy thing is they hired him in 2017 when he was 30. He was 30 years old. I'm older than Sean McVay when Sean McVay was hired in 2017. So it's been 6 years since then. So McVay is currently 36, 37 years old and having the kind of success that he is now. It's just crazy to see at such a young age. 4 and 5, they had John Harbaugh. He's been around at Baltimore since 2008, so he's going on year 16. Anytime that you're a coach for that long, you've had continued success, you're a good coach. Same thing with Mike Tomlin. Hired in 2007. Steelers have been good. He is a Steelers coach to a T. He just fits that Pittsburgh culture very, very well. So hired in 2007, he's going on year 17. Again, same reason, John Harbaugh. You guys have been consistently good for so long, employed by the same team for so long. You deserve to be a top 5 coach. The only one that I think is super interesting is Matt LaFleur ahead of Dan Campbell. I think you could make the argument that Dan could take that spot at 6. LaFleur hired in 2019, so kind of the end of the Aaron Rodgers era. I know that he struggled. They had some inconsistencies, but the Jordan Love turnaround, it's hard to not attribute that to LaFleur. Finally got rid of their defensive coordinator that Green Bay fans have been wanting to get rid of for a while now, so he's willing to make changes. Pretty sure he was tight with his defensive coordinator too, so you love to see that he's willing to get rid of a guy that he's close to in order to improve the team. The NFC North is stacked. I think Green Bay is going to be good. I think I saw a prediction on Twitter where 3 teams in the NFC North made the playoffs, where Chicago and Green Bay were your wild card teams, and the Lions were the first seed overall in the NFC. It was just a prediction, but NFC North is going to be competitive. LaFleur, solid coach. Chicago, they've got an improved offense. It'll be interesting to see how all those pieces fit, but that's where Dan Campbell lands then at number 7. I think it's a fair ranking. You could make an argument for number 6, but just the fact that he's turned into a top 25 percentile, top 20% coach in the league is awesome. He's the only one on this list that was hired in 2021 or later. So he's going on year 3, year 4 of the MCDC era. And I think if he has another year like we had this past year, you're probably looking at him in the top 5 at that point too. So before we finish this topic, as I was kind of creating these bullet points, creating these scripts, Dan Campbell actually had a press conference this morning. And so all the Lions beat writers were tweeting about, what he was responding with. And I want to share 2 things that he said today, because I thought they were just super interesting, and they're both about J-Mo. So somebody asked him, where is Jameson Williams better? Dan Campbell responds with 1 word and says everywhere. He also said that J-Mo has been the most improved player during this offseason program, and said, quote, he's a man on a mission. I'm just going to leave it at that. So there is certainly some Honolulu Blue Kool-Aid to be drinking, the J-Mo hype. And now yesterday, we went through the depth chart and the differences between the depth chart at the end of the year last year compared to now. The wide receiver room is basically the same without Josh Reynolds. We did not extend Josh Reynolds and let him leave. And when you hear these quotes, you're making sense of it, that they just fully believe in J-Mo. He's had a couple years now to develop, and it sounds like things are starting to click for him. Are 5 wide receivers enough for the wide receiver room, though? You've got Amon-Ra in the slot. You're going to have J-Mo going deep. You're going to have Donovan Peoples-Jones as kind of your inside big possession receiver. And then you have Khalif, and you have Antoine Green, rookie drafted 7th round last year, perhaps. Those are your 5 wide receivers. You do have Laporta as a great receiving threat as well in the tight end room. But man, if J-Mo can really be a huge asset in the deep ball on those deep routes, and really make a jump this season, that's going to be just do so much to open up the rest of the offense, where you've got, play action with, the best duo running backs in the league. You've got the best slot receiver in the league, and then to have a deep ball guy like J-Mo just really rounds out your offense altogether. And good luck. Good luck trying to guard those guys, man. Be putting up points, 50 points a game. But what are your thoughts on Mina's rating of MCDC as the 7th best coach in the league? Should he be higher? Should it be lower? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below or over on Twitter. A shorter episode today, only 2 topics. So that is it for this episode of Detroit Sports Talk. Thank you again for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like today's show, subscribe to the channel, comment below to share your thoughts on today's topics, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. Thanks again for taking the time to tune in, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.